Hello, I'm Dr. Jojo Yantz with Asheville Brain Training, and I wanted to take a few minutes today to go through a sample brain map report with you. When I got into this 8 years ago, brain training, I was really surprised that not more offices do this initial brain mapping. It gives us so much information about how the brain's functioning and how it could be working better. So that's what it tells us, and that's why we use it. So let's jump right in, and I'll take you through an example brain map report. So what we're going to look at is the overview report, and I'll show you some of the key areas that I hone in on in terms of identifying how the brain's functioning and how it could be functioning better. And by the way, that's really how we look at things. We don't look for problems or things that are wrong. We look at areas and ways that the brain could be functioning better so that we can help it do just that. There are 12 Olympic teams that use neurofeedback as part of their training regimen, not because anything's wrong, but because it really helps brain function. Okay, so this is an overview of the report. I won't go through that. One of the really cool things is it allows us to compare somebody's results to a normative database of sex-specific, age-specific data for people who have healthy functioning brains, no symptoms. And so that's what these meters point to. How are you in relationship to that? Almost like a bell curve, and it will say if you're here, or it will indicate if you have highs and lows in comparison to that. Another aspect of this report is that we get to look at location-specific information. And for example, we know a lot from functional MRI studies that have been going on for about 15 years now. And we're able to see, we know what each little area of the brain does, and we can see areas, for example, of attention, focus, worry, anger, agitation, irritability, impulsive, disorganized, easily distracted, hyper-emotional. There are a lot of different states and traits that we know what area of the brain has to do with that. And so if we see dysregulation in a certain area of the brain in a certain way, we know that that state or trait or emotion is likely compromised, even if that person is not experiencing those symptoms yet. And we get to put that information next to what the client fills out or what the parent fills out about their child. How is this person, how is their state and trait and emotions and symptoms? And we look for correlation between what the EEG is showing and what that person is reporting. And when we find correlation, we know that there's a huge probability that if we change how the brain's functioning in that way, it will have a corresponding effect on the symptoms and emotions that that person's experiencing. So here's more of that. There's a lot of different information with regard to those. We're able to see norms. Here's the part I really want to show you. And this is where we get 760 points of information about how the brain's functioning. We see here magnitude, and there are a lot of correlations. Here's a map, for example. I see high delta waves. I know this brain is compromised in its ability to have whole brain communication, also known as interfascicular continuity. I know that happens when there's been a head trauma, concussion. That's what we're thinking when we see this. Also, when it's coupled with high interconnectivity or coherence, that tells me the brain is struggling. This is a measure of efficiency. And so this is a brain that in the frontal lobe could be working much more efficiently. This person, by the way, did have a concussion. This is not necessarily diagnostic for a concussion. Other things can cause this as well, but it's like a puzzle putting it all together. And this is an invaluable piece of information, or actually 760 points of information that tell us about how the brain's functioning. We can also see lows. We know that if we have highs or lows in certain ways, that can correspond with worry or either anxiety or depression. Yeah, so we do the map with the eyes closed, which is the best representation of overall brain function. We also do it with the eyes open because this tells us another level of information. If the eyes closed map is like the brain walking, the eyes open map is like the brain running. So we use it kind of like a stress test. The brain takes a lot of energy to process visual information, so it's like we're adding that on the plate of what it has to do, and we often see it go high or low in certain ways because it's having to do that extra task. It should be kind of the same when you open your eyes, but a brain that's fatigued or compromised in some way will often be different. And here we see, by the way, yellow is very high. If this is the norm we're looking at, this would be green. This would be red, 1 to 2 standard deviations away from the norm. 2 or more standard deviations away from the norm is going to be yellow. So the yellows and the dark blues, which are 2 or more standard deviations below. So the dark blues and the yellows really catch my attention because they're so far away from the norm. And just to remind you what the eyes closed looked like. So we have a lot of red, which is high, turning to yellow, which is very high. So this person's delta waves are really compromised in their ability to hold balance, even with the addition of vision. So we also know that high frontal delta and theta, which comes in here with the eyes open, this is kind of one of the recipes for ADD or ADHD. There are really 7 different ways we can see focus and attention being compromised. These are 2 of those ways. So focus, attention, impulse control is what I see compromised here. Also, when we see low beta, that's another indicator that's pointing toward attention and focus being compromised. So this gives us a lot of information, and this is actually how we train the brain when we do neurofeedback. We use eyes open magnitude to train the brain, to tell it when it's working better and when it's not. We do visual and auditory feedback. We take advantage of both of those means of feedback when we're doing the training so that the brain can learn how to produce less of these waves here and more of these waves here. This actually is the most common pattern when I see somebody that's been diagnosed with ADHD. Probably 1/3 of the kids I see that are diagnosed with ADHD don't have this pattern, and those are the kids that I've found have more of a problem with the side effects from the medication because the medications have effects on the brain. They have global effects on the brain, and if you don't need beta waves to be higher and the stimulant medication's making them higher, guess what? You're going to have appetite suppression, you're going to have sleep trouble, you're going to have weight loss, all of the things that are associated with high beta waves, including anxiety is associated with high beta waves. Beta wave dysregulation in general correlates very highly with anxiety, insomnia, OCD and tics, as well as headaches, both migraines and tension headaches. When we see alpha wave dysregulation, that's correlated mostly with depression, which in children, you don't typically see them depressed like an adult. It comes across as anger, irritability, passive-aggressive, these kinds of states and traits. One of the most important aspects of this map is we look for normal asymmetry with regard to beta waves and alpha waves. We know what a happy, healthy brain looks like, and if it's deviated from that, we know how to get it back. We just include that in the training process. So it actually shows the 8 most dysregulated areas and gives me information about what protocol might be the best. In other words, how to reward the brain when it's on track and alert it when it's not. That is the process that actually helps the brain grow new connections and create better function in the area of the brain that we've identified in the beginning could use it. So I hope that helps in explaining kind of what a brain map is, how I see it, why I do it, and if you or a loved one is struggling in some way, let me know. I'm happy to help you, and if you're not near one of our offices, happy to help you find somebody near where you are. I'm Dr. Jojo Yance with Asheville Brain Training.